tribal woman vision. Long before trade beads were introduced by white traders, Lakota women used dyed porcupine quills to beautify their lodges. Quill dangles decorated the smoke flaps of their buffalo hide teepees. Bright wall designs were a source of pride to the lodge owner and the tribe. The finest winter robe with its quill strip would be hung for all to admire. Willow backrests and clothing were adorned with colored quills. Moccasins and teepee bags were ornamented by tireless hands. Gifts were quilled for friends and relatives. A Lakota woman's quillwork was an honor to her family and a mark of her prestige in the village, for quilling was the highest attainment of all the women's arts. In contests of the early quilling societies, a baby carrier was the most respected item. Its measure of wealth was equal in value to a horse. Its maker shared honors with brave warriors in the Red Council Lodge. The finest quillwork adorned the ceremonial pieces. A wrapped or sewn-on pipe bag, or finely plated pipe stems, reflected cultural tradition as well as individual artistry. Many were the things of beauty that brightened the ceremonial dances. A Lakota woman looked with quiet pride at the garments she quilled for herself and for her husband. Often sisters or cousins would sit together and visit in the quiet times of quilling. The black chokecherries drying in the sun would wait until another day to be pounded. For generations, the new holy women have made beautiful quillwork. These ancient techniques are still used by quill workers today. Some worked at sewn-on quillwork on the soft brain-tan skins of elk or deer. Others used stiff rawhide for the wrapped quillwork on a pipe bag, or the collar of a buffalo bladder used to carry food and water. In embroidered quillwork, the quills were sewn on soft leather with sinew thread. Tendons stripped from the backs of elk or deer were scraped clean of flesh at the time of butchering and dried in broad bands to provide sinew for sewing. The stiff bands were crushed to soften the tendons so a single strand could be removed. These strands were moistened in the mouth and rolled individually to provide a strong, smooth thread. The end of the thread was twisted to a point and inserted through the hole made in the leather by the awl. In sewn-on quillwork, tips of the quills were cut off so the quills would not puff up with air after sewing. In those days, a flint knife was used against a piece of rawhide. The quills were moistened in the mouth and flattened between the teeth so the final design would be flat and even. In the old days, quills were washed with yucca root suds. They were dyed with wild grapes, lichens, or bloodroot to obtain purples, yellows, and reds. In sewn-on quilling, the woman first made a hole just through the top surface of the leather with her awl. She then inserted the sinew through the hole and made a hitch or loop in the sinew to secure the quill, and pulled the sinew tight at the top of the robe. Then she repeated the action to secure the quill at the bottom of the robe.
sabi ki troka hea trahish pa unzi zibiela ichapha na thakha ki yoya zabi. Prahi ki edna kapi na Itazipco. Thakha yuta umpi ki uthama he.
Long ago, a bone marker was used to indent the leather to keep the rows of quilling straight. Other times, a taut string of sinew staked to the ground was used to guide the rows. The end of the outgoing quill was tucked under the tip of the incoming quill, and both were secured with a stitch.
Prahi ki eagana ki na akan maji eagana ki na hechel inkpa ki ol khlati iaye. We pathapi ki lena wukhke.
Deer bladder bags made handy carriers for different sizes and colors of quills.
Ehani prahi oganake ki lena yuhapi.
Sewn-on quilling and quill wrapping were two techniques most commonly used by the Western Sioux, or Lakota. The embroidered quillwork for a pipe bag might take 3 or 4 months to complete. The wrapped quillwork for its bottom might be finished in a week. The wrap trim would be sewn to the embroidered bag, and its soft tan fringe would wave in the breezes like the buffalo grass. Quill tips did not have to be cut off for wrapped quillwork. The wrapping was so taut against the rigid rawhide that the quills would not puff up even after many years.
Prahi inkpa ki hena yuksapshi hechena upi. Prahi yut is thahasa ka iapeham hechel trehawashte.
As in sewn-on quilling, several quills were held in the mouth to soften, and each quill was flattened before it was wrapped. Sinew stitches were not needed to secure the quills in wrapped quilling. As each new quill was introduced, its tip was twisted under the end of the preceding quill and secured by overwrapping with the new quill.
Prahi thukchamaji iapeham chan. Oma akan edna kauna inkpa ki yukipash na akan maji iapeham.
However, a sinew loop would be temporarily inserted at the end of each row to secure the final quill in the row.
Oskapi ihanke ekta thakha iuslute umpi hechel naglashi.
After the sinew loop was wrapped in under the last few quills in the row, it was used to pull the final quill tip back beneath the preceding quills, and the loop was removed. The rawhide on which the quills were wrapped had an uncut border on each end, with narrow parallel slits down the length of it. While wrapping, the section was held horizontally and the quill worker worked from right to left on the reverse side. As the rawhide strips were wrapped with different colors, a geometric pattern emerged. While the reverse side of a wrapped quill section showed signs of the black quill tips, the front surface showed only bands of solid color. The finest quillwork was tight, flat, and firm, with no open spaces between the quills. The even rows in the geometric design were perfectly symmetrical. When it was time to cook the soup, the women would part until another day of quilling. The quilling techniques used by our grandmothers are still used by Lakota women today. There are those who live, who know the gift of the double woman. The first step is pulling the guard hairs, which Emil will use to make a dance roach. Every part of the porcupine will eventually be used. The next step is pulling the quills.
I first began quillwork when I was very small. My father taught me how, but he actually didn't do the work himself. He would make articles for his dance outfit, because he said men weren't allowed to do quillwork. It's all women's work. The reason why I learned all this from my father's beadwork and quillwork and tanning is because I lost my mother when I was very small, so I had him for a teacher. So he said that all Indian girls should learn how to do all these things. In between there, I didn't do anything until I got a little bit older. Then I realized it was a lost art, where there wasn't hardly anybody doing this kind of work. So then it was sort of a hobby, but then I started getting more interested in it, and I read more about it, and then I went around asking people when was the last time this was done, and who were the tribes that were doing this kind of work. Then I found out a lot of them did lose the art of quillwork. I taught my daughters how, because I thought it was very important that they should try to carry on what was being lost to our people. Bernadine and Evelyn like to make jewelry so they can sell it and have extra money. Bernadine and Catherine have their own exhibits that you can get from the Sioux Indian Museum. Dolores is making her own dance outfit, which includes a choker and hair ties. My youngest daughter, Mary, likes to make Indian jewelry too. I need some of these quills to be dyed yellow to finish that medicine.
Yellow background?
Yeah, it's all yellow. You can show up more on their dark hairs. And then we have a screen, an ordinary window screen, which we put all of this on top and we shake it, and that separates the hair and maybe birds or grass or whatever that it was in. If we take all that out, and when you do that, it lets all the quills through the screen. And then we have another one that we put the quills in, and when you shake it, the smaller ones, and the next size will be the medium ones that go through, and it just leaves the bigger quills on the screen, which we take and we dump them off on the newspaper. Then we do the same thing again, and that lets the finer ones go through. Then we catch the medium ones. That's the way we separate them. Then you have to keep in mind that all these quills have to go in your mouth, so you want them real clean. When that's over, you rinse them out to make sure you rinse all the soap off.
What color is that? It's supposed to be yellow. For somebody's outfit? Yes, so. These are
After that's done, we spread them out on a newspaper to kind of drain off all the water. Are quills ready to be dyed?
yes, they are.
Do they smell good, no?
Yes. Don't smell like pork pie.
And then you take different pans and you put the quills in there. You add your hot water on top of that. And you put your red dye. We use red dye. You put those in there. And then you let it simmer. How are they?
I think this should be a little bit darker.
Take a little bit longer and there should be darker.
Okay. See, that's a pretty color yellow. I think Mom's gonna use it to make medicine roots with. Is she making it for? I don't know. Someone's dance outfit. A hair piece. Dance outfit. Yellow hair ties? Yeah. Are you almost finished with your little paper cup?
Yeah,
Your yellow's ready.
Now I'm making a head rope for costume. And these are the porcupine guard hairs that I'm tying onto this frame. I'm gonna finish this. I'll have a base. And these are white tail hairs that I'm tying here. And real guard hairs. These round like this. And finished, you wear that on top of your head as the dance costume.
Everything that we wrap on is made from the rawhide of a deer. We have Emil cutting whatever we want for us because he's more steadier with his hands. When we use every part of the porcupine, we use the guard hair, the different size of quills, and they also use the tail. It makes a very good brush because it's really stiff, gets the tangles out.
When the day's quilling is done, there is time to enjoy the beauty of Grass Creek.